Welcome to the Solid Signal Podcast for the week of August 20th, 2018. If you are listening to this on August 17th or August 18th, do not be surprised. You have not entered a time warp. The truth is that I've recorded this podcast just a few days earlier than I normally do because we're making some structural changes around the office in the area where the studio is, and I didn't want to be disrupted, and I didn't want to have to stop a couple of times. So, all things considered, I thought, well, hey, I will record a podcast a couple of days early and fill it with stuff that isn't incredibly time sensitive, and we'll go from there. You ready for the ride? So am I. Well, folks, this is about the 287th weekly podcast that I've recorded, and it's been pretty much every week except for a space of about a month and a half in 2014 when it didn't look like we were going to do that. And why? Well, it's funny. When I did the first ever Solid Signal podcast in 2012, and you can find it on YouTube, it's still there, people told me I was nuts. People said, oh, nobody listens to podcasts anymore. No new podcasts are ever going to succeed. It's just an old style thing. Even the name podcast seemed kind of dated back when I first started. As a matter of fact, if you were ever curious, where did the name podcast come from? It actually draws its name from the iPod. Now, who has an iPod anymore? I mean, okay, in 2001, it was the new hotness, I grant you. But using your hard drive to fill a separate device with music seems kind of archaic now. You either listen to stuff that's on your phone or you stream. An increasing number of people stream because they've got data plans that will accommodate it. And that's how we do stuff in 2018. But we don't call it a streamcast or I don't even know. We still call it a podcast. Why? It's just the same reason that you talk about winding down your windows, turning the knob on your television, stuff like that. Words just kind of stick. So even though you're not putting it on an iPod anymore, it's still called a podcast. And that was the point that I was trying to make, which is that the idea of a podcast seemed really kind of tired back in 2012, and people said, okay, don't bother. And which is why, as a matter of fact, the Solid Signal podcast tends to be about 5 minutes in length, because I got a lot of advice from a lot of people who said, no, don't do an hour-long podcast. Nobody is going to listen to you. Frankly, you don't sound that good and you don't have enough interesting stuff to say. Keep it short, and if you want to do a podcast, at least people will only know they're wasting 5 minutes instead of wasting an hour. Very interesting advice that I got back then. More and more of us actually listen to podcasts in the car instead of listening to radio. Honestly, I gave up on broadcast radio a long time ago. Too many commercials, and the music is not that good. So I listen to podcasts in the car. My car will do it. Any car with Android Auto or CarPlay will do it. And a lot of automobiles actually are beginning to have that sort of functionality built in. I know that the extremely popular Tesla Model 3 does. So podcasts have had a bit of a resurgence, and that makes it kind of cool for me because now I'm one of the old guard of podcasts. Oh, I don't think that I'll ever reach the listenership of some of the more popular ones, even the specialty tech ones. The last time I checked, it looked like about 500 to 700 of you were subscribing every week, which is awesome for me. And I got to say, wow, you people, I am so grateful that so many people are willing to spend just a few minutes of their day listening to stuff that I have to say once a week. It really is very humbling, and I'm very appreciative of it. I just took a quick break and I checked the metrics for our first ever podcast. And even after 5 years of sitting up there on YouTube and through a couple of other podcast aggregators, it has managed to accumulate a staggering 129 visits. Gotta say, I'm glad to see that things have grown since then, because I love the idea that I'm out there talking to you people, you folks who are willing to listen to me. There are a few of you I know who have been listening almost since the very beginning, although I doubt there's anybody out there who's been listening since the very beginning, since there were so few people who listened in the first place. I guess what I'm trying to say is thank you. I hope that you keep listening. I hope if you have suggestions for podcasts that you'll let us know through the comments on YouTube or through the post on the blog or any other way that you'd like to tell me about, because this is your podcast as much as it is mine. I appreciate the time that you invest in it, and I appreciate every single one of you. I look forward to many, many more podcasts to come, not just 300, but 400 and 600, and who knows what. Maybe I'll even start doing a daily podcast someday. One never knows, does one? Anyway, that's about it for this particular podcast. Have a great week, and I will see you again real soon.